Hey, everybody, and welcome to Key Conversations for Leaders. I'm your host, John Ryan, and today we have a very special guest, Dr. Mike Horne. Mike coaches leaders to avoid, minimize, and reduce poor outcomes related to people and culture actions and decisions. Mike is advancing authenticity leadership in the world by coaching leaders to close the gap between probable and possible, and to bring the very best in every situation to spur innovation. Mike is the author of Integrity by Design, Working, Living Authentically. Thanks so much for being here, Mike. Appreciate you having you here.
Hi, John. I'm so delighted to be here with you and your audience today.
Wonderful. Mike, in your work, you talk about authenticity and integrity. Would you mind taking a moment and just helping us to really understand what those terms mean to you, especially after your research into these concepts?
Sure, absolutely, because they're different yet related concepts. And we can explore them in a few ways. But first, maybe it's some definitions around them, right? To provide a bit of a framework. Does that sound about right?
That's exactly what I'm hoping for. Yeah.
Okay. When I think about integrity, and when we think about integrity, we think about something that is of whole cloth. It's the genuine article. Um, it's as if I was an engineer, a structural engineer, I might say that everything hangs together. And integrity is a construct or a concept, John, that gets tested over time, and it develops over time. It's different when you're a pre-teenager versus when you're in your 20s versus in your 30s and later in life. I think about integrity sometimes as the musical notes that happen over the course of a lifetime. But it's the sense that I'm dealing with a genuine article. Um, when I think about authenticity, I think about my words and my actions align. And even better yet, my thoughts, words, and actions align. The ABCs, the attitudes, behaviors, and cognitions, everything's in alignment. And when that happens, and this is the word I like to use with authenticity, it's congruency. That when my thoughts, words, and actions align, the result is that I produce a sustained happiness. I don't mean the kind of happiness that comes with finding a new boyfriend or girlfriend or partner, or the kind that comes maybe with the birth of a child. But I mean this sort of happiness. And what we know and why this is so important is that people enjoy working with and for happy people. Life is better, happier. One of my mentors used to say that he thought the purpose of coaching was to reduce suffering. It's more of a Buddhist approach. I think of it as, increasing happiness. So, that's one thing that comes to mind when I think about the concepts of integrity and authenticity. And on this path of authentic leadership, it's so important because at the core of authentic leadership is trust, building a trusting relationship. And I don't think you've ever met a person where you've said, I trust that, I don't trust that person. Usually when you think I don't trust that person, you think that person doesn't have integrity. Or if you say,
Mhm.
oh, that person doesn't have integrity, you don't trust them. These concepts all sort of get related on our path and our push to bring more of who we are to what we do, John.
That makes sense. So the integrity is the foundation of trust, and authenticity, you said, is something related. When I is that a they're overlapping ideas. Is that fair to say?
Sure,
Yeah.
because I think, authenticity, given this congruency that we find, it's affected by the kind of values you operate from, right? A set of humanistic values, I think, works for me. Because I don't know about your world, but I've encountered some authentic jerks. So I'm talking about starting from a place based on humanistic values, right? That I find uh, dignity in everyone. I treat others with respect. I grow inclusion around me by having diverse ideas and diverse people around me. And these are all the things that create a place for all of us to bring more of who we are to what we do. And I often ask people, where can you be more authentic, at work or at home? the predictable answer is people say, oh, not at work. Right. So there's just so much left on the table, right? People feel that they can be more of who they are at home and less so at work. Look, I'm not adverse to, and I'm not blind to all of the isms that apply in workplaces and groups and teams. And we need to create cultures where our desires to bring more of who we are to what we do match our intents.
So there's layers of implication in what I'm hearing. One is that integrity, the alignment of attitudes, behaviors, and cognitions, thoughts, feelings, emotions, behaviors, values alignment as well. That's great for a happiness, internal fulfillment kind of thing. But you're also extending into the leadership role is that also people want to follow people who are happy, who have that integrity and authenticity, and you know what you're getting. Because if you don't have that, you don't have trust, and you really don't have a very good relationship as well.
Right. And, sometimes people ask me, well, is it okay to lie? And I always laugh at that question. Uh, why are you asking me that? But what I do know, based on observation, as a consultant and as an executive in some very large global corporations, is that when an executive or when a person, a manager tells a lie, it's difficult to recover. It's not impossible, but it starts to erode trust, and that makes it difficult to produce remarkable results.
I can see that. So that, and not that that's necessarily your focus, is how to, or maybe it is part of your focus, is how to rebuild that trust afterwards. If someone has a misstep and they say one thing and it's not accurate and they erode the trust they have, I imagine that can take quite a long to repair that because people have long memories, especially the more significant it is in terms of their world.
Oh, I think you have to think about all of this as having recovery. And I think there are skills that executives and leaders employ in order to invite people in, to trust more, to regain. Look, a lot of the people that I work with, a lot of the executives that I work with, C-suite leaders and aspiring folks getting to the C-suite, these are people who advanced because of their smarts, their technical expertise, not their leadership qualities. Despite what social science research tells us that, we should select for leadership qualities, not technical expertise. Most of the folks that I work with are technical experts, and they're very accomplished, and they've been driven by excellence and hard work. And a lot of these kinds of skills that are required to lead authentically need to be developed, need to be reawakened, need to be established around goals, because these people don't want to find themselves out of touch. And in everything that's going on in the world in terms of the great resignation taking place, people saying, what's in it for me to come back to this environment? Not everyone, right? But those who are privileged and lucky to have these situations, we're going to need leaders who connect better with people, more authentically with people, and who can lean in to accomplish great things.
You identified that people obviously find it much easier to be more authentic at home than they do at work. What are the biggest barriers that we have to being authentic and taking that risk? Obviously, you said there's the authentic jerks who are not necessarily having the humanistic values, but to really, because I imagine there's some vulnerability and some risk involved in being authentic, or is that an illusion, perhaps?
Oh, I don't think it's an illusion, but we'd have to fire over, however many managers there are in America, like 12 million managers or something. It would require like retraining an entire, and I don't think anybody's prepared for that. So we have to think about ways that we can let go of some of our old ideas about leadership, which, is happening. If one thing the, global pandemic has brought us, it's accelerated some of the shifts that were happening in the workplace already, right? What about the 5-day work week? What about, working from home? What about working remotely? What about, your need to see me? All of these concepts are in shift and in flux, and that puts us in a demand for leaders who have to do two things. At the base, maybe to demonstrate their authenticity. If I was to, shape the construct in two ideas, one would be you've got to care. You got to show that you care. If you don't care, and the second thing is you've got to be willing to do the work. And this is, with the folks with whom I'm privileged to work with, they're often able to get to that second corner, which is to say, I'm willing to do some work on this because I don't want to find myself on the outside looking in.
When people care and when they do the work, when they have those two qualities, what is the downside that they might experience along the way? What are the risks that they're experiencing when they are doing the work and they're being vulnerable and going down that path?
Mm-hmm. The downside is called learning and growth.
Awesome.
And I think that's, more of an upside usually.
Sure.
But we're conditioned, I think, as adults to believe that learning is fun, right? There used to be corporate euphemisms, if you if you can't make it, just fake it, right? Learning isn't fun. Most learning that I've engaged in, that I've helped others with, it's full of anxiety, it's full of stress. It's but you get, as one of my mentors used to say, in grave danger of growing. And this is why we, need helpers along the way, and confident, competent people are able to ask for help.
That makes sense. So when someone is on that path, are there any indications or things they should look out if they're not being authentic, or if perhaps the culture at large is not in alignment with the corporate values?
Well, corporations are generally displeasing to most of us, I think. I'll tell you, I had an illusion earlier in life that organizations were paragons of virtue, that they were about mission, purpose, group work, teamwork, all.
Wait, Mike, that's not true?
I learned early that organizations, and that's what attracted me to the field of organization development, organization behavior. I mean, that belief about the possibility to make out of our differences great, great creativity. What you learn, I think, is that organizations are full of politics and backstabbing, and the need to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow more. And I think all of this we have to put into balance with, what it really takes to succeed.
So you broke that illusion, I'm guessing, and you've come to recognize that, okay, not all as it seems in corporate America. I imagine you got to believe that things can change. And of course, we're not going to wipe the slate clean and start over, but we're going to work with what we have now. Is there hope to have a more authentic workforce where people can express and be in alignment on those levels you talked about earlier?
John, you can always make the grass greener where you are. I should limit my, you can usually make the grass greener where you are. Not always, but you can usually make the grass greener where you are. And I don't think I've ever encountered, with one exception, a leader who wasn't concerned about growth. And, organizations are, all enterprise is human enterprise. And growth, at its best in a team, members express, great care for the personal and professional growth of each other. And that can scale and that can replicate. It can replicate from a team of 8 to an organization of some size if leaders have the values discussion.
And I imagine it's got to be more than the discussion, because so many companies have had the values conversation and they print them out and they have posters everywhere, but the behaviors don't align, which is integrity, which is exactly what you're talking about. So I imagine it's got to translate into the action part.
Oh, sure. I mean, there's so many great examples. I mean, the classic example is Enron. The number one value in Enron was integrity. That didn't work out too well for them. We saw that repeated at Wells Fargo, where integrity was a corporate value. What are they on their fourth CEO now in the last few years? I'm not sure. You can see it in the shift of how executive compensation and golden parachutes have now been transformed in the United States and in other places, where even inappropriate conduct doesn't prevent or preclude the payout of a large golden parachute. And there, look at this McDonald's CEO, look at one of the United Airlines CEO. We've come to sometimes, I think, different terms or different concepts of this, and yet, we need to remain empathetic and empathic with one another.
Are there any suggestions or guidelines you'd recommend for leaders who want to be more authentic for themselves and
Mm-hmm.
also create a culture of authenticity and integrity?
Mm-hmm. Say hello.
It's that simple.
Yeah, it's our oldest and best technology. When I think often we get, so tied up in our work that we see each other as elements of production, cogs in the wheel, hamsters on the wheel. And, it's not really, well, John, how are you? It's John, I need this, I need this report. I need this thing. And that keeps it at a pretty transactional level. But I don't know what happened to you, John, 5 minutes before we met, or what will happen to you 10 minutes after we conclude today. But I do know that I have this moment in time with you right now. And the easiest way to start that is to say hello to you.
I love it.
Yeah.
When there are difficult conversations, let's say feedback performance, and of course there's different realms and spectrums
Sure.
of directness, indirectness, and things like that as well.
Yeah, you're a smart guy on this. You teach this. I mean, you've got a
Sure.
repertoire of skill around this, right?
Sure. I love talking about communication and feedback. That's what, learning and growth is all about, how to best inspire and motivate others. If someone's being authentic and they have integrity and they're coming at it with, let's say, a positive intention, should there be any like framing and hand holding, or can you get straight to the point, or do we have to really consider the best way to get through to this person in that moment versus me just saying, hey, I'm just being authentic and saying what's true for me?
Right. So self-awareness is great. And it's a cornerstone to authentic leadership, to the development of authentic leadership, so that you can use yourself, you can use your agency, you can have yourself available to use. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychoanalyst, I think said it best. One is that the greatest privilege in a lifetime is becoming the person you are, becoming who you are. Secondly, that the ability to accept your current state is so important and fundamental to any change. And that thirdly, in order to make growth, in order to make progress, we accept this state of where we are.
So it's an acceptance of what is, yet the inherent desire to be more, and being okay with where you are and where you're going along the way. Am I hearing that correctly?
Sure, I think so, right? I mean, most people come to me, I think, or come to this approach because, one, they're dealing with issues of scale, right? And, maybe I'm a manager and now I'm a manager of managers. Maybe I'm leading a division in an organization. So they have scale issues. Oftentimes they have, feedback issues, issues of which they're not completely or quite aware, and they need some help to address those issues. And then at other times, people have executives have personal goals that they want to achieve, right? They want to be more effective in their development of others. They want to be improved in their ability to help others to chart goals. So I think all of that, conspires to create cases or approaches for the possibility of growth and development. No innovation happens without that.
Say the last part again, please. Sorry.
No innovation happens without that.
Innovation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And thank you for
I
clarifying.
mean, performance management is often such a, I'll give you feedback and point out your deficiencies, despite, again, working with people's strengths and a focus on that. I think our abilities are often geared more to find fault with others and organizations.
I can appreciate it. So it's almost against our own predisposition to focus on the strengths that we inherently go towards the negative. Do you think that's part of our own psychology?
I think for a lot of executives, natural born problem solvers, natural born decision makers, people who are in a hurry to succeed, this is why it's so important to, focus on interpersonal relationships and getting the right people together on a team or in a group for work that can be, just extraordinary.
Excellent. Mike, just one last question. Here at Key Conversations for Leaders, we believe that conversations are a key to growth, change, and communicating the integrity and authenticity that we have. Can you think, or would you mind sharing with us like a conversation perhaps that you've had either personally or professionally that had a profound impact on you in your life?
Mm-hmm. The question was, what if you did care? From my mentor, Edie Seashore, who was a legend in the human potential movement and NTL, and probably trained Dave Bradford, one of your recent podcast guests.
Sure.
I remember being in a group with Edie at one point, and I said, I don't care about that or whatever. And the question about, what if you did care? I think it ignited a lifetime of learning for me.
Amazing. Simple, elegant. What a gift.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah. And thank you for sharing that with us and our listeners as well.
I often think about feedback, John, too, and I know we're at a close. But, some have talked about the feedback being the breakfast of champions, to use an old phrase. But one of the things that I learned as well from the Seashores was that feedback often says more about the giver than it does the receiver. And there's some truth to that. So, what we do to help others in this great, profession of coaching and is the ability to ask for feedback, to inquire of somebody. Well, how, because it really helps you to learn about the other person. What can be more important than developing a meaningful, productive, relevant, and inspiring relationship with another person?
Absolutely worth it as an addendum.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for indulging me in that.
Of course. No, I appreciate it. I could talk to you for hours, and I know it's definitely coming to our time. Quick question. What is the best way for our viewers and listeners to get in touch with you and find out more about your work and authenticity and integrity?
Mike-Horne, HORNE.com. That'll point you in all of my directions. And for those on social media, you'll find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And tune into my podcast, Authentic Change with Mike Horne. But you'll find out all about it at Mike-Horne.com.
Excellent. I'll put a link to all of those social media platforms in our notes as well. And Dr. Mike, thanks so much for being here. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, John. I've so enjoyed our time together, and thank you.
And for those of you watching and listening, until next time, develop yourself, empower others, and lead by example.